units that we are going to cover. First is about the introduction. Okay. And in introduction, we will cover about what is ECM, what is Filenet, what are the different products in Filenet. And there are two UI products from Filenet. One is called the Workplace XT, and one is called the newer one is called the IBM Content Navigator, or ICN, right? So we will deal with both Workplace XT and IBM Content Navigator. So
Okay.
Workplace XT is an older product, but then sometimes very useful for administration jobs, especially when it comes to process, especially. There are some tools which are yet to be useful in Workplace XT. But IBM Content Navigator is the UI which basically deals with all sorts of the new UI which is built on Dojo framework, and that is by IBM. Okay, and it is again highly uh, uh, you can say configurable and customizable, right, over the time. Now the other introduction to ECM and IBM Filenet P8, and majorly we will be dealing with Filenet P8 5.1, right? 5.1 version. So if you see IBM Filenet, we have uh, uh, majorly IBM Filenet P8 started with or really became a large product from 3.0. 3.0 onwards, there are multiple versions: 3.5, 4.0, 4.5, 5.1, and 5.2. Okay, but we will be restricting ourselves, which is more in the industry, is 5.1, and we will be talking more about the 5.1 version, which has the same architectural concept over the time, but over the time it has changed. Only in architecture session, we will be dealing with all the versions of FileNet, just to give you a view how FileNet has changed over the time. The second session, although many people don't at all deal with this, okay, is the architecture session, because you have to understand the internal wires of any system to actually make the system look working, right? So architecture wise, we will be talking about the n layered architecture. There are 4-layer architecture in FileNet. What are the different layers, how it works, and we will talk about the different high, mid, and low level views of architecture. And then there are 3 engines of FileNet: content engine, process engine, application engine. And we will be talking about each one of them, how they interact with each other, how they talk to each other, individual architecture, and other engines like rendition engine and so on, other supporting engines around the FileNet. So architecture session will deal. Now
Okay.
about now to talk about content. So content, as you know, the ECM, when you say it is enterprise content management, and FileNet is an enterprise content management tool, right? So the main branch of FileNet becomes content, process, and connectivity. So now, if we are talking about content, content becomes a biggest part, widespread part of FileNet, and we will talk about introduction about the business objects. Okay, how we basically add documents, deal with documents of different view, editing properties, security of versioning, folders filed in, history, information page, etc., etc. All that we will basically in different UI, how it looks, how we can basically manage this, administer it. Also, I will say very important concept of FileNet is the versioning concept. So as you know, in enterprise content management, one of the important concept is versioning, how you are managing document. So when we are talking about document management system, we'll talk about how documents can be managed, how the documents versioning is done, check out, check in, etc., etc. I mean, there is a concept called Filenet Save, which we will introduce also. Right? Then, how do we administer content engine? Content engine, it's the main engine that deals with the content. So, how do we do the administration of content engine? There is a tool called Filenet Enterprise Manager. There is also a tool called ACCE, but we will deal with mainly Filenet Enterprise Manager. Filenet Enterprise Manager is the very a .NET based administration, Filenet administration tool, which will be used to basically administer the content engine, the different parts, and it's a huge tool. So we need to have different things. Okay, how classes. Now, one of the important concept is the inheritance, classes, class properties. Basically, it is not Java concept. So it's basically, let's say that it is Filenet works on an inheritance concept, right? So let's say that when we are talking about inheritance, we'll talk about it. Okay, a generic inheritance concept. Anything in Filenet is called as object, right? Business object. Now, when we are talking about objects in the Filenet, we classify them. Okay, and the art of classification is called taxonomy. We'll talk about that also. What is taxonomy? What's a classification? What is metadata? Okay. So art of classification is called taxonomy. Now let's say that you have in the world, if I have to tell you, okay, classify automobiles, right? Classify automobiles. What would your answer be? If I generally say classify any automobiles, I mean, or you say the vehicles, right?
That I understood. Classification means we can have to like a bike, car,
Okay.
different ways. Heavy load vehicles like lorry.
Yeah.
This way we can go
Okay.
further.
See, if basically, if you see your thinking is now confined to only roadways, right? All that you spoke about is about roadways, but
Yeah.
actually roadways is not the only mode of transport, right? So very high level if we start, okay, then it
Okay.
comes roadways, railways, airways, and waterways, right? In
Yeah.
roadways, you can talk about two-wheeler, four-wheeler,
Okay.
six-wheeler, eight-wheeler, etc., etc. Right?
Mm.
Like and different types of classification you can do. Like you can say LMV, HTV, etc. So, and then in the railways again there is goods and passenger, etc., etc. So ideally, that's why I always say that this classification is such an art. If we learn really how to classify in FileNet, okay, or in enterprise content management, the most of the business problems are solved because the right way of classification. For example, when we
Okay.
are talking classifying document, and let's say we are in banking, right? In banking, we can classify documents in 100 different ways. Okay, in say in insurance also we can define in 100 different ways. What actually helps us in how best, easiest, the best way we classify and how best we put those objects in place in such a way that my that serves the business purpose, okay,
Okay.
of the business I'm dealing with, whether it is banking, insurance, all any major verticals you take. This the small classification and classes, etc., etc., takes very very important role. Yeah, you got. So I just gave you an example. So this will actually clarify how basically the say insurance industry, okay, and then talk about how real time we can classify documents in insurance. Definitely, I mean, we have to take real time scenarios, and then we will talk about what a choice list, property templates. These are all concepts of FileNet, class definitions, you know, and bottom-up approach of classification and event subscription. One very important topic for all administrators is the content storage options. What are the different content storage options, especially for administrators? How basically, content can be stored in FileNet, etc., etc. We will talk about. Yeah. And then coming to the process part. The second branch of enterprise content management deals with process. And process, when we talk about process, it is basically depicting any practical business process, okay, into a flow or concept, right? And that's what is called a workflow. Okay, so
Okay.
workflow concepts, working with the task, okay, reading workflow maps, working with workflow definitions, managing workflows. Basically, very important for administrators would be managing workflows. There are several tools called, first is the process services I have given by FileNet, okay, and then is the different tools called process configuration console, process tracker, process administrator, how to use all this to make sure that you actually administer workflow. Yeah. And then finally, we will talk about the security concepts in FileNet. Okay.
Okay.
And security, any enterprise content management, especially FileNet, security is very, very an important concept. And there are multiple concepts in security, right? There are
Okay.
multiple concepts in security. Basically, authentication in FileNet, how it is done, it is generally done by the directory services. Okay, maybe
Okay.
Active Directory or LDAP or all. Authorization, how do we do? What are the different sources of security? How the security takes precedence? And we have wonderful sessions on all this content process, security, and all that. We have wonderful sessions. How you basically administer all this together to so that you call yourself as a